Jimmy Cabs, Tape to Broadcast. This is the 5150 interview series in Bulldozer Magazine. I'm here with Ted Aguilar of Death Angel.
How are you?
Interesting show tonight, man. Cavalera Conspiracy, CLC Blind, Death Angel.
And Lodicon, yeah.
How do you feel about being on this very eclectic bill?
Great. It's something we wanted to do, something different, but great, you know. It's a tour where everyone's getting along. You know, the Cavalera Conspiracy brings this family vibe with them. You know, they have their son's Lodicon opening up. And they've just been super cool. Everyone on this tour has been great. No egos, no drama. It's all about bringing the best show to the fans. And it's a comfortable tour, and we're having a blast. Everyone's having a blast, and, you know, we're glad we're out on this run.
You know, this bill reminds me of the Bay Area back like in 1984, 85, where it was such different types of bands all playing together. Would you say it kind of has that reminiscent feel?
Pretty much. It's like it's still heavy music, but it's a different type of heavy music. And it's good to have that type of tour to bring different fans together and just get exposed. Like the COC fans get to see who DA. I mean, they probably heard the name, but they never seen us live. Same with Cavalera, you know. Our fans probably heard of Cavalera, but never seen them live, so it brings everyone together and just check it out. So I think tours like this should happen quite often.
This is really interesting. When you think of the Death Angel demographic, the audience, there's two. There's the older, I hate using that word now, the older fan base, the more mature, a little grayer, a little more experienced. Then there's the younger generation. There are very few bands that can not only retain the original fan base and the new fan base, but still be as appealing and still bring that energy just like when they started. How does Death Angel do that?
We're still into it. You know, it's the secret, man. We're still into the, you know, playing music, writing music, recording music, touring. We haven't lost the fire. I'm sure, I mean, there was a couple of members, the original members, who kind of lost the fire, and, you know, it happens with everyone. I mean, life happens. But me, Rob, and Mark, we still have that fire to want to go out and record, tour, write music, and we have Damien and Will who share the same fire, and this lineup's been intact for like 6 years, and with 2 albums, and we're still have that fire, you know? And that's the secret, and just, you know, writing good music that we like, first and foremost. So it's one of those things. It's like a relationship, you know? The key to how do you keep the fire still burning? You know what I mean? Because sometimes it could be dim. You just got to keep it burning, because once it's out, it's out. It's just trying to keep that fire lit, and I think we were able to do that. The 3 of us plus Will and Damien being in the band.
Does it also help that, again, there's been a resurgence within the last 10 to 15 years of that pioneering generation of bands, but a lot of them are coming back for the wrong reasons. They're coming back because now the market's there again. They can make that money that they lost back in the day. The thing that's different about Death Angel is, as you mentioned, you're still into it, is the fact that your latest releases, you're not doing the classic rock theme thing, you know, the greatest hits thing. Your latest releases not only have this whole, what I would like to say, rejuvification, where you still maintain the old Death Angel traits, but you're burning on whole new cylinders now, creatively. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with it. I mean, with the latest release, The Dream Calls for Blood. With the latest release, The Dream Calls for Blood, it's how do I explain it? It's we've gone through a lot as a band, you know? I mean, having to lose 2 original members, you know, we had a lot to prove. At that point, you know, I didn't know if the band was going to continue. Because, you know, when you lose 2 original members and when you start losing members, you know, it kind of like dampers you a little bit. Like, because that's something you try to avoid, and, you know, you want to keep it intact. But then when we got Will and Damien, we had something to prove with Relentless Retribution. And I think we did well on that. And having to tour on that album for 3 years, Relentless Retribution, having to tour, you know, hitting all 4 points of the globe, you know, and having to be in different countries and getting to know each other as musicians and people, and doing the Ultraviolence towards the end of that tour in its entirety brought like a spark in us, and it just made us, especially doing the Ultraviolence in its entirety, kind of made us realize, wow, because that album helped pioneer the whole thrash scene. It was a very important album, and having to do that made you go, you know what? This is why we like doing it. It kind of brought us back to being young again. So it's just like, that's how the Dream Calls for Blood come out, and it's still fresh, it's still thrash, but it's kind of like who we are today, you know.
One of the things that's interesting that I know you probably hate having this brought up, but you mentioned the Ultraviolence.
Yeah.
You were a fan at that time.
Very much so. It's an album that helped pioneer the thrash scene. It's highly important. It's up there with the Kill 'Em All, Bonded by Blood, Peace Cells, you know, all in spreading the disease, you know. It's up there, and it's a great album. And at that time, when it was released in 1987, you know, it was unheard of young kids putting out that type of music, really good songwriting with that intensity. It's unheard of. Nowadays, a lot of kids are putting out albums like that. But then, a bunch of teenagers putting out an album like the Ultraviolence, whoa, man, it's a great record. It's still one of my favorites. It's in my top 10. And without that album, the band wouldn't be here today.
All right, let's direct it to the present. Being that you were there as a fan with Death Angel, and now you've been in the band for, 2001.
Yeah.
When you're writing new material like you did for this last album, do you subconsciously think of how I can stay at that Ultraviolence creative level or even surpass that?
Oh,
Does that come into play at all?
no. With us, I mean, we get influenced by it, but there's no way you could surpass Ultraviolence. It's just you can't recreate that moment in time ever. You know, even if you had all the original members back in the band, they couldn't recreate that moment in time. But we use it as influence. We go back to see the energy of it, like, and try to, you know, what was the band's headspace at the time. You know, that's about it. And mixed with that and how we are today, you know. And, you know, it's hard because people always say, write another Ultraviolence, write another Act 3. And when they tell people, you know, like, I read interviews, Slayer or should write another Raining Blood, you can't. There's no way you can. You just got to write what you're feeling today. But, you know, it's always, I mean, since Rob writes all the music and he wrote most of Ultraviolence, there's a little of that in his head, you know. There's a little piece of...
It's in the DNA.
It's in the DNA, so it's going to come out, but it's going to come out of who he is, with who he is today, you know. That foundation's there. But that's, you know, Death Angel's always been a band that could go thrash, and they mix it up with a little funk like they did in Act 3, or little crazy jazzy stuff with, like, Frolic Through the Park. And, you know, there's some acoustic music, so it's all lumped up in one. And, you know, who knows, down the road we might do another album with some acoustic music or some mellow rock stuff. Who knows what the future holds. But right now we're on this energy, like this heavy, brutal music.